Want a fruit tree that is super productive, beautiful, easy to maintain, and gives you delicious fruit? How about one that the deer and squirrels don't really like to eat that much? Need one that's easy to propagate from cuttings? Well, the fig tree is the answer to all these things. Hi, I'm Kim, and this is one of many fig trees that I have growing here on my 2.5 acre property in Northern California. And it is by far the oldest one of them all at 8 years old. In fact, most of the fruit trees growing on my property came from this tree via cuttings. Now in today's video, I'm going to share with you planting in the ground one of the cuttings that I took from this tree about 2 years ago that's now firmly rooted and established. But first, let me show you how to take a cutting. Just takes a few moments and it's so simple. I don't want anyone to be intimidated. Now let me show you just how easy it is to take a cutting from this tree. You can see the tree is fruiting already. It is full of fruit, as it always is, and it looks super healthy. One thing that fruit trees tend to do, certainly this variety, the brown turkey, is they tend to be multi-branched, and those branches will go in all different directions. And as you can see, I've got some going downward here. In fact, that branch under there, yeah, that one might need to come off, because that is the first thing you're going to do to take a cutting, is to pick a branch you're okay with taking off the tree. If you want your tree to grow taller, then you probably don't want to take off the taller branches. Although I like to keep all my fruit trees at about 6 to 7 feet because I don't want to reach any higher than that to harvest my fruit. Once you've picked your branch, you use some clean, sterilized pruners and you just snip it off like this. That's all there is to it. Let's say, actually, I would like to keep this branch, but I'd like it to start shooting a branch upward. Then you just find an outward-facing bud. Let's see if we can find one. Well, actually, what I found here is the main branch continues on, and then it comes off in two places. But this one here, the first one, is actually coming upward in slope. So I think I want to keep that and cut this off right here. But let's say this branch wasn't here, I would probably take the cutting right here so that this outward-facing bud could come up. What you wouldn't want to do is cut right above, say, an inward-facing bud, whether it's already sprouted or not, because once you cut here, this is going to take off and go inward into the tree. You don't want that. You want outward-facing buds, like this one, going out from the tree. So again, whether it's already sprouted or it's just a bud, you'd want to cut right above that outward-facing bud if you want the tree to shoot off another branch there. So with this low branch, I'm going to cut it off right here, which leaves this nicely upward shooting branch that already has fruit set on it. Now looking again at this branch, I see this downward branch. I don't really want that, so I'm going to cut that right at the branch because I don't want another shoot coming out of there, going down. And what are we left with here? We're left with this branch with that upward facing smaller branch coming off of it. Now later I could go back and take that off, and I probably will come back and take this downward one off. But for now, the tree's looking beautiful and full of fruit, and we've got our cuttings. Now this cutting is pretty basic. You'll take off most of the leaves when you put it in the ground, leaving just one or two. You'll definitely take off those little figs, and that's all there is to that. This cutting, on the other hand, has 2 branches on it, so I'm gonna cut it in half, take off some leaves, and that's 2 cuttings I'm gonna have. Finally, the first cutting we took, which is super tall. When I put it in the ground, I'll probably angle it like this so that the part coming out of the ground is straighter. One thing I want to tell you is you don't need to put any rooting hormone on this at all. You just put it in the wet ground, not sopping wet, but very, very damp, and keep it that way all the time. So now let's get started planting our rooted cutting. So this fig tree cutting is about 2.5 years old. and I think it's definitely ready to get planted in the ground. Obviously, it's firmly established with its root system because not only has it sent out multiple branches from the initial cutting, but as you can see, it is fruiting this year. So, yep, definitely going to get this in the ground today. Now, as you can see, there is a second cutting that is now growing 2 branches, but it's much smaller, so I'm going to leave it for probably another year, year and a half before I transplant it as its own established tree. Now, these are both brown turkey fig cuttings taken off my one mothered tree. I have multiples of these around the garden now, and it's a very tasty fig and super easy to grow, super easy to propagate, to clone from cuttings as well. So this area right outside my back door is, I guess you'd call it a little kitchen garden. I do something different with it every year pretty much. Once I had about 25 containers on top of a wooden picnic table, the table and the benches, and that worked great. This year I have gone ahead and put some containers and some grow bags on top of this old raised bed. Now, as you can see, this bed, my first one ever, was built with pressure treated wood. I do not recommend this at all. Yes, pressure treated wood lasts longer, but it's full of chemicals, and I really don't want that in the stuff I grow. So I really haven't used it since the first year, because the first year I didn't know any better. Someone else built this for me and I didn't even realize what was used. And after I researched it and discovered that it might leach some of those chemicals, I just didn't want to do that. And as you can see, despite the fact that it was pressure treated, just 8 or 9 years after it was built, it's already completely warped. So yeah. Another thing that I did wrong with this first bed was I put native soil in it. Not just that, but as you can see from what's creeping out there, I put it in with native soil that was on top of where used to grow Bermuda grass. And that Bermuda grass definitely found its way up through the soil. Now, there's nothing wrong with growing in clay as long as you add in some organic material. Clay actually has lots of minerals. And as long as you, like I said, add in, say, decomposing food scraps and rotted manure, all that organic material is going to build up the soil. But in combination with the fact that I didn't want to grow in this wood and the fact that the Bermuda grass was a constant threat, I went ahead and just put some mint in it for tea and pretty much left it alone. But this year I decided why not use it as an actual raised bed, meaning it raises everything up much higher so I don't have to bend over to take care of my plants. So I've got some butternut in here, some zucchini, a couple of tomatoes, and some strawberries, and something I rooted in here a long time ago just to see if it would grow, which it clearly did. That would be purple tree kale. And it's definitely grown like crazy in here. But I bring you over here to show you that I'm in the middle of planting up this bed. Those purple crates there don't even have anything in them yet. I've decided to put my fig tree right in the middle in the soil, because it will do fine in this soil. The soil is now, in addition to being clay, it's got lots of other stuff that's been added to it over the years. And I think it'll do really well here. Now you say, what about the fact that there's pressure treated wood? Well, for one thing, I'm putting the fig tree right in the middle, which will give shade, filtered shade to these other plants all around it, which I think is a cool thing. But for another thing, because it's in the middle, it's kind of far away from these boards here, and I really don't think that anything is going to leach over there if it hasn't already leached out over all these years. But the other thing is, I'm going to be taking this bed apart slowly over the next year or two. One board at a time, or one side at a time anyway. I'm going to replace it with stone, I believe. And so once I do that, I probably will go ahead and plant herbs, maybe some flowers around the fig tree, and the fig tree will be the centerpiece. And I think that that is going to look super good. You know, you see there's a little shade here, but that's because it's still early morning. By 11 a.m., this thing is in full sun for the rest of the day. So I think the fig tree will do really well here. Okay, got the wide hole dug where it's gonna go, and it turns out when I took these two trees, the big one and the little one, out of the container, they came out as one unit. Let me show you. All right, so here is the little cutting with the two branches coming out of it, but it's super connected to the large cutting, which, you know, is a pretty good sized little tree at this point. And I just didn't want to separate all these roots. Fig trees have shallow fibrous roots. Now one corner of it broke off when I brought it here, but that's because it was the corner that didn't have the fig roots in it. And I just feel like this would be a shame and dangerous, a little bit of a risk to separate. So I'm just gonna put both of them in the ground. It'll do fine. Now you might be wondering, because I did say the native soil that I put in this bed originally was clay soil. Well, is it gonna have good enough drainage? The fact is that besides being clay, it's also got a bit of sand in it, because this used to be river where we live, and I'm always finding river rock and sand throughout the clay. But long story short, this 18 to 20 inch hole I have dug is going to be plenty deep enough and have great drainage for the fig tree or fig trees. I think they're just going to combine into one big fig bush. I did go ahead and do the drainage test, filled it with water, and it drained within 10 minutes. Great drainage, really, for the type of soil it is. And I think that this fig tree is going to do fabulous here. I have fig trees in the ground at other places on the property, and they do marvelous. So I'm going to get this in the ground now and see how it looks. So the fig tree is in the ground, and I'm really happy with how it looks. It was a little more difficult to get in there than I thought, because I had to kind of crouch in there between that grow bag and all the crates, and it was a little crowded. But it went nicely into the hole I had dug. The only thing is, when I put it in, the soil around the roots sort of parted naturally between the big tree and the little tree. So I ended up just planting the bigger one in there. And I put the smaller tree in a pot, and we're gonna let it get bigger in there. But this looks fabulous. I might rearrange the crates here just a little to give the tree a little more room to spread out, but we'll see. Now here is the tree that was smaller, and now it only has one branch, as you can see, coming out of it. It had a really good root system though, so I think this is going to take off and start sprouting more branches. I will probably take this purple tree kale out. Well, of course this little cutting, but I mean this, which might look dead, but actually, if you follow the branch, it has a whole bunch of very nice shoots coming off of it. Now each one of those shoots, it looks like there's 7 or so, could make a great purple tree kale all on its own, because that is another plant that is very easy to take from cutting. To take as in to take and start rooting in the ground. You just shove this in some soil and it goes crazy. So I can have as many purple tree kale plants as I want, and I do like a lot of them because they are an evergreen. They taste even more delicious in the winter than in the summer. I love them. They're great in stir fry. My chickens love them. Even the ducks love them. So yeah, I'll probably take those cuttings and get rid of that so that this fig tree can really take off. And then the reason it only has one branch is one branch that was the casualty in this whole planting endeavor. A little second tiny branch off of the second tree, and it's right here now. So this is now basically a cutting. I took off the other 2 leaves, leaving just this one. I'll probably take this one big leaf off in a moment too, and just leave the stick with its little sprout there, that little baby leaf. And this is going to do most likely fine. I'd say 80%, if not more, of my fig tree cuttings take off. And I either plant them somewhere or give them away. But yes, despite the wind we've got this morning, that looks really great. I'm happy with that, and I can just imagine it as it gets bigger being a real focal piece of what I envision this bed being in future years. And now for the 4 bonus points I promised you. First, the best time to transplant your rooted cuttings is in the early spring or in the fall. Now, I was kind of pushing it a bit in this video, because it is the end of May here in Northern California and it's already in the mid-80s. But my rooted cuttings have been outside year-round for about 2 years, so they are used to this climate. They've been in 3/4 sun, so they're going to be just fine. In fact, I transplanted them to an area very close to where they were, so it's the same exact microclimate, so it's not going to bother them. But normally, early spring or fall is the best time to transplant your rooted cuttings. Second, did you know that most fig trees are hardy down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit? And there are several varieties that can go even lower, zone 5, 6, 7. And some of those are the Hardy Chicago, the Celeste, the Little Ruby, and there are others too. So don't give up if you live in a colder zone than me. Third, did you know that figs freeze well? They do. So at the height of production, when you're getting lots and lots of figs, more than you can eat fresh, you can just rinse them off and throw them whole into the freezer. Then you can pull them out later when you want to make some cooking sauces or jams or maybe some fig cookie bars. Finally, the fourth bonus, and one I consider a really great one. Did you know that many varieties of fruit trees, when they're mature, will give you 2 crops of fruit every year? Here in Zone 9B, my mature brown turkey fig gives me a crop every spring and every fall, and I absolutely love that. So maybe you should consider growing some fig trees. Productive, easy to propagate, and delicious in a different way. Why not give it a try? I think these will do very well here. This is the same spot I rooted the others in. And this time I'm going to try to remember to up-pot them before they get so entwined I can't separate them. I could also root them in separate pots. I've done that too. But this works really well, so, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Any questions? Just leave them in the comments.